Squamish, Squamish, Oweo. As always, we are meeting tonight on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. Thanks everyone for your patience. We just had a bit of a technical glitch at the beginning there. Motion to adopt the amended agenda. We just, based on our conversation this afternoon, expanded our Ministerial Order 192, which includes public attendance at Brennan Park for those who want to, who don't have access to the live stream of our meetings. So with that, motion to approve the amended agenda. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Stoner. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We do now have to pass Ministerial Order M192, which allows us to limit in-person public attendance at Municipal Hall for this meeting. But we are ensuring openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability at this meeting by the following means. This meeting is being live streamed. A video of this meeting will be available on the district's website for viewing on an on-demand basis. The meeting is open to the public for electronic participation through the WebEx application and via phone. And limited public attendance is available this evening at Brennan Park Recreation Center. So with that, a motion to approve our motion around Ministerial Order 192. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Pettengill. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. I will now read our electronic meeting procedure statement. Council members attending the meeting electronically are required to advise the chair of the meeting of the following circumstances. When the council member disconnects or reconnects, so that this can be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Council members are to identify themselves when they advise the chair that they wish to be placed on the speakers list by raising their hand if they are connected with video, or just saying chair if they are connected by audio only. With respect to a vote, council members are only required to state a nay vote. No statement is required if the member is in favor. Council members shall put their phone or computer on mute unless they wish to speak. Council members shall be involved in and participate in the meeting. Council members shall text the corporate officer if they're having technical difficulties with their telephone or computer connection. And then if we are having technical difficulties at this end, we will recess for up to 10 minutes to fix that and make sure that everyone is connected to the meeting. So with that, I will move forward with our agenda. Any notice of motion, council? Seeing none. We have a couple of delegations joining us electronically this evening. The first is Devon Black and Lisa Jensen. They're team members. Devon is a co-founder of AccessBC. Lisa is a team member of AccessBC. And so if we could, moderator, elevate our guests so that they can speak. And feel free to turn your video on if you so choose, or simply connect via audio, whatever you're most comfortable with.
She's muted.
Have we unmuted those?
I have.
She just muted herself again. Terry,
So
you're muted.
You're still muted, Lisa, sorry.
Great.
Is that better? Did you sound better?
There, we can hear you now, thank you.
Oh, phew, good, okay. Good evening, Squamish councillors. I've come to you today to ask you to endorse a proposed policy that's very important. I moved to Squamish to teach in the Peterside School District 2 years ago, and I've had the elementary and middle school level as a band director and performing arts teacher. As all teachers know, we don't just teach letters, numbers, and notes. We teach the whole child and try to help them develop all the skills and before I moved to Squamish, I volunteered for private lessons at St. James Academy, a senior state academy for at-risk children and youth. I was so proud to be working with children. Seeing these children playing in safe stage with friends, develop skills for good self-esteem, building to meet the power of coalition, and for prevention for experience. I feel the same way about working with AccessBC to support the proposed policy for universal no-cost contraception. I look back on my privilege as a young woman and have through all the types of defense. This meant I was able to exercise good control over my reputation. Unfortunately, our current system in DC disproportionately prevents some of our most vulnerable populations from exercising basic rights. I'm asking for a motion showing my endorsement of this policy so that the federal government including supported and positive. This policy has already been endorsed by Speaker, Gloria, Bernie, and now recently Kimberly. As a result, Resolution 76 and 87 requires this policy that might be considered next month. Caution is a significant barrier to people accessing contraception, particularly people with low income able to march on the community. Making contraceptive care providers identify costs as the single most important barrier to access due to the population most affected by this barrier. A recent pilot study in pediatrics and child health found that 10% of people could not access contraception wanted or chose to stop using it to apply. Due to the rising economic instability and COVID measures, AccessBC has volunteers who work in healthcare for patients that have increased difficulty accessing contraception. The most reliable method of contraception, which is IUDs, tend to have the highest upfront cost, and many people claim to let the argument as common. Studies have found that when cost is a major factor, people increasingly choose unreliable options. Providing free prescription contraception has also been shown to improve health outcomes and reducing risks associated with pregnancy. And it's likely to reduce
Lisa?
environmental costs and potential health outcomes.
I'm just going to stop you there for a second. Some people are having trouble hearing you, and it may be better to turn your video off just so we capture your audio clearly, just for bandwidth reasons.
Oh, sure. Let me try
Oh,
turning
that's
it on.
better.
Or
Yes,
maybe,
there,
oh,
that's
that's
good.
better,
That's
even just
what it
being
was.
closer to your computer.
Oh, okay. Can you all hear me better now? Thumbs up if you can.
Yep, that's better.
Oh, okay, good. Maybe I'll start just a little bit further back just
Okay.
to, yeah. So providing free prescription contraception has also been shown to improve health outcomes for parents and infants by reducing risks associated with unintended pregnancy, and is likely to reduce direct medical costs on preventive health risks. Half the people with unintended pregnancy seek abortion services, and those who continue the pregnancy seek care later, a higher rate of smoking during pregnancy, higher rates of preterm delivery, and low birth weight. People who become pregnant tend to take on the biggest share of the cost in the event of an unplanned pregnancy, which can mean a lot of learning opportunities, health consequences, or the financial cost of childbearing. As a result, programs that offer free prescription contraception found to be revenue positive. Options for sexual health estimated in a study that the DC government gave as much as $95 million annually. Most importantly, this is an issue of solving gender inequality. Contraceptive methods targeted at men are available at low cost or are covered with the mental services fund, whereas contraceptive methods for people with uterus is high up cost. In the midst of COVID-19, women's workforce participation has plunged to its lowest level in 3 decades, and their job recovery is notably slow. The hardest hit industries are those which tend to employ women, and women have shouldered a significantly higher proportion of unpaid caring labor in response to school closures. These economic effects will have long-term and severe impacts on gender equality in our province with significant action not taken to support women's workforce. One proven way to do that is to improve contraception access for everyone. On a related topic, when I talked to Chris Cunningham, I was inspired by him to also approach the council about supporting the provision of free months. This motion could be separate from a motion supporting AccessBC's proposed policy. So it would be like a second motion that could propose a municipal column or other to be voted and provide municipal products for the market. This would be a way that large municipality could direct this policy. Access to mental products is also an issue that impacts hospital women who are yet as controversial. In June 2019, Victoria started providing free contraceptive loans for disabilities.
We're losing you again a bit, Lisa. If you could move closer to your microphone, that would be helpful.
Well, that's actually all I have for today, so thank you for your time listening. I will open the floor to any questions, and I'm happy to go over anything that we can missed earlier.
Thank you so much.
We don't-
Council, do you have any questions? Not seeing any questions at this time. There is a proposed motion that has been presented to our council from Ms. Jensen.
Yes, there has been one that I forwarded to Vanessa. That was from Vancouver.
I move the motion.
The Vancouver motion?
Yeah, the Vancouver motion.
Is there a seconder? Councilor Herford, are you seconding that? Great. Councilor Stoner, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank both of our guests who have shown up for this really important topic as a delegation to council. There's no doubt that women continue to bear additional costs just for the fact of whether it's menstrual products and or the cost of contraception. The amount of research that was included with this package as well as the draft motion makes this a no-brainer to me to support. So thank you so much for doing the due diligence and bringing it to council.
Any other comments? Councilor Pettengill?
Yeah, I'm happy to support this and like to thank Ms. Jensen for bringing this forward. And it seemed to fit well with some of the equity policy that we've been speaking about recently before our break. And this is well supported, I think, too, by resolutions going forward to UBCM. And so I think we're in good company in supporting this, and it makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Councilor French?
I too will be supporting the motion. I think this is an investment in our health and our healthcare system. Thank you both for coming forward today and bringing this to our attention.
Thank you. Any other comments? I certainly will be supporting this issue. I know that the province will be making many tough choices as they allot their $1.5 billion in recovery funds, but also consider their budget going forward. But they have indicated in their principles for recovery that equity is an important factor, and also reducing poverty. And this is an issue that strikes at the heart of equity for me. Making prescription contraception available to women who need it is a really important issue. So I thank our delegation for bringing this forward. If there's no other comments, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for your efforts. Councilor Pettengill.
Mayor, there was a request that we put forward another motion about making menstrual products available in municipal washrooms, and I just had a question for staff, if that is something we already do.
It's not.
Is that something that we'd be best to, I guess I'd like to put forward that it be included in the budget so that we can see what the implications of this would be.
So Councilor Pettengill moves that we discuss the availability of menstrual products in our public washrooms as part of the budget for 2021. Is there a seconder? Councilor French, you're seconding that? Thank you. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you to my male colleagues for bringing that to the floor. It's nice when women don't have to do all the heavy lifting on matters of equity and access, so thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Black, Ms. Jensen, for joining us this evening and bringing this important motion forward. Really appreciate it. Have a good evening. Thank you. All right. Next up is our delegation from our own staff. And this is a request to declare October 19th to 25th, 2020 Waste Reduction Week. And I will turn it over to you, Ms. Steglich.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here with you and to meet you all. My name is Nicole Steglich. I am covering as the Integrated Solid Waste Specialist for Shannon White while she's on maternity leave. So, Mayor Elliott, thank you for introducing that the District of Squamish has been asked by the Recycling Council of BC to proclaim October 19th to 25th as Waste Reduction Week. Waste Reduction Week in Canada is in its 19th year, and it's intended to raise awareness about waste and its environmental and social impacts. Sustainability teams will use Waste Reduction Week to promote the wealth of information and programs in Squamish to keep resources out of our landfill and in the economy where they belong. This will include focusing on food waste and wood waste to leverage the successes that we've gained so far through the zero waste strategy. With COVID, it will be an opportunity to adapt our strategy to reach the community, businesses, schools. And like I mentioned, the idea is to promote the information and programs that we have, such as the What Goes Where guide, which includes a listing of locations that accept more than 30 different materials that aren't accepted in our curbside program. We recommend that the District of Squamish proclaim October 19th to 25th as Waste Reduction Week, and we look forward to promoting it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, any questions for Ms. Steglich? I was wondering if council would like to challenge each other to produce the least amount of waste that week, and we'll all have to weigh our garbage bag at the end of October that week, October 19th to 25th. Would anybody like to join that challenge? Councillor Stoner, Councillor Pettingill, Councillor Herford, Councillor French. Anybody else? All right, so it's a council challenge. So Ms. Steglich, if you could remind us prior to that week, and we will keep track of what we are putting in the landfill. I know we have different household sizes, but maybe we could do like a per capita household weight. Since I've got 4 people in my house, other people have 2. So we'll see who can get it the lowest per person in their household overall. All right, now that that's on, would someone like to put forward the proclamation request? Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Herford. Councillor French.
Yeah, I see this week as a really great opportunity to really promote the food waste collection programs, the various programs that we have in our community. And it's one of our big moves in our sustainability plan. So I'm looking forward to this as an opportunity to really step it up, particularly around the collection of organics. So I'll be supporting, of course.
Thank you, Councillor French. Anyone else? Councillor Herford.
Thank you. I think this is an exciting opportunity to really actually pay attention. I know there's so many things in the world to be paying attention to, but this is one that we can all control inside our households and really our actions as we move throughout the community. And if it starts with 1 week, that's great. And I look forward to not needing to have this week as our community gets trained for every week to put out very little to the landfill, because I know with a concerted effort, it's actually not that hard to do, and that we can all do it. And I also look forward to winning the council challenge.
All right. The gauntlet's been thrown. Councillor Herbert thinks he's got this nailed down. We'll see about that. I've heard that Councillor Pettingill and his partner Kelly actually have a very dialed-in system here. So I think you've got stiff competition there, Councillor Herbert. I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll look forward to participating, Ms. Steglich.
Thank you.
All right, onwards. Item 6, consideration of unscheduled public attendance. So this is any member of the public who feels they have an issue they want to put in front of council that can't wait 2 weeks to be put on the next regular agenda. Is there anyone raising their hand for unscheduled public attendance?
And nobody.
There's no one at Brennan Park and no one currently online, so we will move on. Next up, we do not have any scheduled items or public hearings this evening. So we are on to item 9, bylaws. And this is third reading of a number of rezonings related to aligning the zoning bylaw with our OCP from 2018. So I will turn it over to staff to present the report to council on the public hearing.
You're missing that. You there? Jason?
We're just elevating all of our staff for this item to panelists, so. Mr. Gunn, I see you. Are you presenting this evening? Or?
Actually, we had not anticipated doing the presentation. Our goal was to provide the staff report, or the public hearing report, which included details from the event, the minutes, to include all the comments. But in order to ensure validity of the process and to ensure that we don't present any new information into the process, we've did the public hearing report, and we're here to answer any questions that are related to general discussion around the legislation, but not specifically that could add new information to the process.
Thank you. So council, any questions of clarification would not add new information to the process? Seeing none. Council, we will go in order that these are presented on the agenda. First up is section A. This is the rezoning of large greenfield properties zoned RS1 to multiple unit residential RM5. The first bylaw that is before us is the update to the District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw number 2500-2017, amendment bylaw RS1 parcels number 2731-2020 be given third reading. Is there someone that would like to move that? Councillor Pettengill, you're moving that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Stoner. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councillor Pettengill? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I think my comments are sort of general to these, so I'll maybe speak to a lot of them here and not repeat myself. But I think I had a lot of time to think about this over the break and what we heard. I think for me, I have some regret that we didn't have better communication about
Councillor Race?
just was concerned that was a process thing, but if not, I'll continue. So
I think Councillor Race just raised his hand to be put on the speakers list.
okay, all right. So I do have some regrets that we didn't do a better job of communicating the whole process. For me, I think what this is about is, the OCT is very clear about a vision for the community, and I think with the way those properties are zoned right now, they do not fit that. I'm not convinced entirely that the new zonings are perfect, but I think they take us down to a better place, and they put us in a place where we can have the conversations of the community and the engagement that I think people want. And so I see this as a good step forward, and that with sub-area planning and quite possibly future rezonings, a lot of the concerns that were addressed in terms of engagement, which I do hear, we can deal with, and I don't see this as doing away with engagement. I think it's important to move quickly because these lands are developable now in a manner that's not consistent with the OCP. So I do feel it's important to address that, and then that puts our community in a place to get the sort of development there that the community wants, I believe. So for those reasons, I am happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Pettengill. Councillor Reyes.
Thank you. I'm also just intending to speak once, and so I'll speak for the whole suite of bylaws, all the different sections. And as you know, I wasn't present at first and second reading. I was away on holiday at that time, and so this is my first chance to speak to these bylaws. And I am generally aligned with the OCP and its goals, and these bylaws are an attempt to align, as Councillor Pettengill said, some existing zoning with the newer goals of the OCP. And for the most part, I'm in favor of that process. I do have concerns about the first agenda items, which is Section A, which is the rezoning of two RS1 properties. Others I'm in favor of and will be voting in support of third reading. Changes in zoning to me for those properties are mostly what I call lateral changes in value or development potential, really not a significant difference. But the two RS1 properties to me are different. The zoning will reduce the value significantly. You heard words like sterilized and economically unbuildable. That would be the effect of this zoning bylaw on these properties. Both of these properties were zoned many years ago, before I got on council, and going by memory, the Newport Ridge property was zoned sometime in the mid-90s. And I'm not positive about when the Crumpit Woods property was zoned, but certainly before I got on council. And that, of course, is a cost to that process that the landowner would have gone through, would have raised the value of the land. And those properties have changed hands since then. And presumably the price that was transacted would have reflected that raised value. So it may be also part of a business plan or financing package now with the lending institution at the higher value of the RS1 zoning. This zoning is an attempt to freeze development until a sub-area plan is adopted. Both landowners have indicated an intent to prepare a sub-area plan, and I think we should let them do that. But that process is fraught with uncertainty. There's no guarantee of a successful conclusion. Council, of course, has an absolute discretion on zoning, and whether it's this council or a future council, things can change. If we approve this bylaw, then in the meantime, the value of the property is substantially stripped away. And that could be indefinite. So I'm not in favor of that course of action. It's highly prejudicial to the landlord. Downsizing is a drastic tool. We tried it last term on Cleveland Avenue, but we walked back on that. We retreated from that position because of the negative effect it would have on the landlord. The OCP for me is a vision for future development. It's not a tool to change history. We must be very careful, I think, when we're proposing change the rights that have been given in the past without the consent of the landlord. So I will not be supporting third reading for those properties with the bylaws listed in Section A relating to these two RS1 properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reyes. Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. I too will just try and speak once and address all the various rezonings in front of us. So, in general, I support third reading of all the proposed amendments. I sincerely appreciate the amount of feedback that we received, and I can't understate how much feedback we received through the process. And I'm definitely most sensitive to the feedback and the comments that we got through the process, about the process, sentiments of lack of transparency of this council, and that this council and staff were trying to rush through major projects without due consideration of public consultation. And I just want to reflect, I've been reflecting on that quite a bit between the public hearing and now, and I think there's a few things that come to mind. One was, as I went back and looked through the comments, was folks felt very upset that this was happening electronically. And I think although it was electronic and it was our first attempt at a public hearing electronically, this is our new normal. And that is just a reality that we all have to come to grips with. And we, I think, had a few audio glitches throughout the evening, but for the most part, the public hearing went off extremely smoothly, and that is a huge thanks to staff and the public for their patience and their adaptability to make this new process work. I think based on the number of comments that we received and the number of folks that we know attended the public hearing, in some ways I actually think we received more feedback in this public hearing process than in others if it was held simply as an in-person event. I think as I then reflect on where some of these comments came from, I think one of the bigger challenges is that the technical nature and detailed nature of the zoning bylaw and perhaps our inability or some of the lessons learned that we can take away in terms of communications and narratives around some of these bigger projects. And so that's definitely one lesson learned that I have, and look forward to rethinking how we as council and as staff in these bigger projects can build a more comprehensive narrative around some of these projects. And so specifically for this one, as we talk about a zoning bylaw update, the zoning bylaw is a regulatory tool that the municipality uses to implement the OCP. And I feel okay moving these particular bylaws forward because the OCP was a result of almost 2 years of public engagement. And to me, this suite of amendments is really an effort to address where the current zoning is grossly out of line with the vision of that new OCP policy that our community put so much time and effort into developing. These rezonings do not preclude future rezonings. I heard from a number of folks, and very much appreciate hearing from the developers that there's a willingness on their behalf to work collaboratively with the district, that they agree and are on board with the vision of the OCP and are willing to do this work behind the sub-area planning. I didn't hear from any of them a strong rationale as to why this can't be driven based on these new proposed zones. And why they actually need to maintain their existing zoning in order to support that. Specifically with regards to the new RM5 zone, I do just want to speak to that briefly and recognize that this is not necessarily an ideal zone for me, I don't think, but I do think that if I look at it holistically across the neighborhood, it gets us closer to our OCP vision than what we currently have. And that includes an increase in diversity of housing forms across the neighborhood. It provides for commercial space that would allow for complete compact communities. And it actually reduces the footprint of the allowable developable land and potentially preserves some more green space. And so I think the other thing that we heard, or that I heard strongly from the community, was that there was a lot of questions on what this would mean in terms of infrastructure development, how we do that broader consultation for each of these communities. And I think that is a process that does need to be driven through the area planning for each of these different neighborhoods. And so I look forward to that being where that consultation can take place and where that planning can take place on a more detailed level.
Thank you, Councillor Stoner. Any other comments from Council on Section A? Councillor French and then Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Based on feedback that we received, it's clear to me that there are deep concerns about how we've handled this file. Too much of the work of this project was done without, in my opinion, generally consulting impacted landowners and adjacent landowners, who all have an expectation for the future of their neighborhood and their community. We heard in the public hearing and in the days before that meeting from many people who simply don't understand some or all of the proposed changes being contemplated. There's a lack of understanding of what has motivated the proposed changes. There's a lack of understanding for what we're trying to achieve, and I believe there's a lack of support generally for some of the changes that were contemplated. The message that I've heard loud there is the community wants transparency, consultation, open government, honesty, and fair treatment. And I think that's a fair criticism on this spot. I also believe there's a perception that we missed the mark on collaboration with some of the moves that we're contemplating. There's a further belief amongst some folks that some of the proposed zoning changes don't align with the official community plan. I've heard loud and clear that we need to rethink the RM5 zoning and the C11 zoning. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I will be speaking to the four proposed, four bylaws before us under Section A. So I'll speak generally regarding all of them. I will not be supporting these bylaws, these four bylaws. My thinking as follows. I'm not convinced that applying the proposed RM5 zone is the planning tool or initiative that we need, or one that will work in our interests. I have lived for a long time near the Valley Cliff commercial hub. It has rarely been fully occupied. This example illustrates for me the challenge of complete communities, complete neighborhoods. The RM5 two-use zone, it has been claimed, doesn't align with the OCP. I think this perspective is understandable because its implications are not clear, which is why I referred to the existing Valley Cliff commercial hub example. Its implications are unclear also for delivery of more affordable housing, it appears to me. That its implications wouldn't be clear to financial institutions is understandable to me. Among the goals in the OCP and in our council's strategic plan relating to complete communities is local jobs and economic development. I wonder if the local jobs and the real practical context for complete communities is being sufficiently thought through by all of us. In larger buildings and multi-family housing, the construction workforce and materials and service suppliers network typically come from the city. I meet every day when we go past construction sites and see the names of the companies and where the workforce and their patterns of movement. Changing this should be a goal, but it definitely requires the partnership with the developers. Our interest in this is highlighted and featured in the emerging target sectors action strategy that we approved just late this spring. As an example of what I have in mind here about economic contribution from the housing sector, Mr. Fast Company in 2004 was the first use of insulating concrete forms in this region. And that was an initiative to develop the local value chain. Mr. Fast Company saw a personal stake in this, and this is how economic development relates to housing development. And I think this is a real consideration. Achieving complete communities and applying a climate emergency lens, these things are complicated. The Diamond Head Lands offer of the Section 219 covenant as an alternative approach to working with the district appeared to me to be promising. I do appreciate there may be planning department concern regarding the 4-year time limit clause that was proposed by the developer. However, I can understand the Diamond Head Lands Company's perspective as well. Unfortunately, there have been precedent cases of landowners left in limbo for years through the terms of a few councils, and this would be an additional concern. This lack of confidence is problematic and can be costly for all of us. We need to figure out how to plan and deliver mixed use on the slopes on the east side of the Lower Valley, behind Valley Cliff perhaps in the long term, Lot 515, University Heights, Newport Ridge, and also Lot 509, 510, the Chima lands. To do this, we need good partnerships with developers. I'm concerned that we are politicizing density to working in an overly aggressive mode with insufficient public and stakeholder engagement. We should try to avoid this, and all of us are involved from my personal point of view. What we need to do, I think, is to emphasize what we do want. And we have perhaps been emphasizing what we do not want. And I think that if we turn that around and take a positive approach as we move forward, whatever shapes up this is my personal view of something that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Other comments? Councillor Herford.
Thank you. When we took on the project of aligning the zoning with the OCP, I don't think that any of us really understood exactly what that meant. And this is the rubber hitting the road there. So if we're setting out to meet the goals laid out through, as Councillor Stoner said, the public consultation, the extensive and award-winning public consultation process set out in the OCP, that resulted in the OCP, these actions, I think, get us there. It's either we go back and we're amending the OCP to reflect it. This is all about to reflect the keeping the zoning as is, or we take the OCP and we move forward with those policies. As we go into the next phases as well, it'll be interesting to see what that holds. With this, I agree we need to have more public consultation, and I see this as a tool to achieve that. That is, as I see it, one of the main drivers of this is to ensure that we do have public consultation about what's going to end up happening on these lands, and we're positioning to do that. Nearly every week, I guess every second week maybe, we're asked to rezone something at a developer's behalf, and a lot of those for good reasons, and some are successful and some aren't. We're able to work our way through this, and I think that it is appropriate for the district to take control of the situation when necessary, to make sure that we do get what we want, and we do not end up having to accept something that we do not want. And the royal we is the community at large, and in this case, to me, they're represented by the OCP. We're not handcuffed by incompatible zoning and have to accept something that is not acceptable to the community. And I look forward to having those discussions and seeing specific area plans. And I acknowledge that zoning, I think, is a very awkward tool for parcels this large. There's no one zone we can apply over the whole piece that knocks it out of the ballpark in describing what we want there. That's a specific area plan. It's going to result in those parcels being subdivided up into different smaller pieces that will be zoned specifically, and we're going to have, and it will result in achieving what we'd like there, which is that mix of uses that's been well discussed. The tool, I readily admit, is awkward and often counterintuitive, but I believe it will get us to where we need to be, and I think it's our job to make sure that we get there, or go back and change the plans. And I'm, for one, not willing to go back and amend the OCP, which is what I see the other option being at this point. So I'll be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herford. I have some comments, but I'll just check to see if there's any other councillors that wish to comment at this time. So I think with Section A, for me, it's always been important to read the OCP amendment together with the zoning bylaw. And contrary to some of the comments I've heard, I think read together, both of these explain what we do want. We do want a sub-area plan. As my colleagues have said, this is where the deep engagement happens on these large parcels, and no one zone could capture that effectively. The OCP amendment allows for greater density with that sub-area planning process than what is allowed now. So there is some upside for the developer And contrary to some comments in the public hearing saying that I don't believe in single-family homes, I do. They have a place in our community, but I don't believe in single-family home-only neighborhoods. It is really time to start creating neighborhoods where there's mixed forms of housing. And not just condos and townhouses. We are starting to see the introduction of cottages. We need to see triplexes, which we just approved one in Brackendale. We need to see quadplexes. We need to see a mixed form of housing, and sub-area planning gets us there. The OCP amendment also mentions that the employment space that provided doesn't necessarily need to meet the minimum established in the existing zoning, which is the RM5 zoning, because in consultation with our community, we can determine what makes the neighborhood most livable, most walkable, and what's needed in each of those zones while still protecting our downtown. So I think there has been consultations with the proponents. I certainly have taken on board the feedback from the community that we could have done better with broader community engagement, and we're always open to that feedback, and we'll take that into consideration going forward, especially during the pandemic, where we are meeting primarily from a distance and using electronic means. I think these amendments in Section A are a belt and suspenders approach to ensuring that we do achieve what we set out in the 2018 OCP. And in terms of the value of the land, I think the value of the RS1 neighborhood in these large parcels disappeared with the adoption of that OCP, which clearly said that sort of vision for these large parcels was not supportable going forward. I'm looking forward to the sub-area planning process. I think it'll be very important to make sure that we get it right, and that these large parcels integrate well into the existing communities around them, and that they add benefit to our ever-growing community by creating a place of connection, a place of walkability, a place where people of different economic means can live together. And then we're not creating exclusive, expensive to service neighborhoods. So I think these move us in the right direction, and I will support the motion in front of us and the remaining 3 motions in Section A.
They have bylaws all.
I will read them all separately. Any other comments? That's okay.
Thank you. I was just a bit flustered when I started. Just like to add a few points, if I might. I heard in general from most of the commenters support for a mix of forms of housing. And in a lot of the correspondence, we got a very strong desire to protect green spaces and livability. There's a lot of concerns raised about what might happen to Coho Park in particular. And I think what came out in the public hearing is that, for me anyways, is that this is a tool, again, to protect some of these values. And I think I really want to reiterate that I saw this and understood the importance of moving quickly on a rezoning, because these lands are zoned right now for single family, contrary to the OCP, and we couldn't have waited for a developer to put in a proposal and then change our mind. We had to act now to try and get something a little closer to the OCP. I don't think it's perfect, but it puts the community in a much stronger place to then have those discussions with the developers who said they want to work to find something that works for everyone. I think we all want to do that. Just make sure that the community is in a strong position to do that, in my perspective. And I think that's really important for me when I'm looking at decisions. I'm trying to do my best to think about what does the community as a whole need and want, and what will serve the community best. We've heard a lot of concerns about growth, and we've tried to address that from my perspective with the amount of zone density that has not changed on those parcels. And so this is not a allowing a whole bunch more growth. I think this really is aligned with what our community has been saying. I think where we've fallen short is explaining that, but I think it's important that we get this in place so that we don't end up with the exact thing the community doesn't want. Once we have the zoning in place, then we can continue to have the sub-area planning, possibly some more rezoning, and get that more perfect community that everyone says they want. And I do see in the next phases much more opportunity for engagement.
Thank you, Councilor Pettengill. Any further comments? I'll call the question on, again, we have to do these one at a time. I realize people commented on several of them, but we will go through them one at a time. So this is calling the question on the OCP Amendment Bylaw 2731-2020. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councilor Race, Councilor Anderson, Councilor French opposed. Motion carries. Next up, District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw number 2200-2011 Amendment Bylaw Multi-Unit Residential RM5 number 2742-2020 be given third reading. Is there someone who'd like to move that? Councilor Stoner is moving that. It is seconded by Councilor Hertford, seconds. I know people have spoken to this. I will check if there's any further comments on the zoning amendment related to RM5. Seeing no hands, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councilor Race, Councilor Anderson, Councilor French opposed. Motion carries. Next up, District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw Newport Ridge Parcel number 2718-2020 be given third reading. I will move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Stoner. Any comments? Councilor Stoner.
I do just want to reiterate and clarify that this parcel does not impact Cocoa or Merrill Park. So I think that was a confusion that was out there. And I just want to make sure that is clear for the record that this parcel does not touch either of those parcels.
I'll also comment that I appreciate the feedback from the proponent of the Newport Ridge parcel. It was one of the reasons that I put forward the motion to bring back the CAC policy for reconsideration this evening. So I'm glad that's on our agenda, and I do appreciate this proponent's feedback in that regard, that making this zoning change and then requiring the new CAC policy to apply would have been punitive. And I think what's before us tonight helps address some of those concerns. So I appreciate the feedback from this proponent in that regard. I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councilor Race, Councilor Anderson, Councilor French opposed. Motion carries. Finally, the last one in Section A, District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw 2200-2011 Amendment Bylaw North Crumpit Parcel number 2722-2020 be given third reading. That is moved by Councilor Pettengill, seconded by Councilor Stoner. Any comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Councilor Race, Councilor Anderson, Councilor French opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Section B, this is to do with the rezoning of unsurveyed Crown land and private land outside the growth management boundary from RS1 to Park, Recreation and Institutional Use, P3, and Resource, RE. The first bylaw before us is the District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw number 2200-2011 Amendment Bylaw Unsurveyed Crown Park, number 2739-2020 be given third reading. That is moved by Councilor Stoner, seconded by Councilor Hertford. Are there any comments on this? I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw 2200-2011 Amendment Bylaw Unsurveyed Crown Resource, number 2738-2020 be given third reading. Moved by Councilor Pettengill, seconded by Councilor Stoner. Any comments? I'll just say that looking forward and addressing these parcels outside the growth management boundary is important. Again, to align with the OCP and the vision for the community going forward. And I appreciate these changes that staff have brought forward. I'll call the question on this one. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, in section B, District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011, amendment bylaw Valley Cliff Resource number 2737, 2020 be given third reading. Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Herford. Thank you. Any comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Section C is to rezone the parcel off of Aspen Road from multiple unit residential RM2 to neighborhood node commercial C13. First in this section is District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw number 2500-2017, Amendment Bylaw Aspen East number 2740-2020. Be given third reading. I will move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Stoner. Are there any comments on this one? I would like to comment that I think this change is important. I think that the North Yards is an area that has seen growth pressure, and creating a more walkable community in this area and focusing on rental housing is an important change. I look forward to working with the owners of this land to make sure that we deliver on a really great walkable neighborhood for the North Yards area. Councilor Anderson.
I'd just like to make the observation of supporting this also for the reasons, in addition to Mayor Elliott's comments, that there's good consideration given to employment lands and future evolving employment land needs in this area, which may be compromised by other approaches that we are choosing not to take. So a commercial node rather than, say, a housing emphasis. So this is good consideration for the evolving picture in that precinct for employment land uses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Any further comments? We'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Related to this is the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011, amendment bylaw neighborhood node commercial C13 number 2734, 2020 be given third reading. Someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Finally, District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011, amendment bylaw Aspen Road parcel number 2723, 2020 be given third reading. So someone, Councillor Stoner moves that. That is seconded by. I will second it. It's going to take a while if people aren't going to raise their hands. Any comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Section E, this is to rezone the RE parcel along Highway 99 to Highway 99 Ecotourism C12. That the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011, amendment bylaw Highway 99 Ecotourism number 2727, 2020 be given third reading. That is moved by Councillor Herford and seconded by Councillor Pettengill. Thank you. Any comments on this one? Councillor Anderson. Oh, take yourself off mute, Councillor Anderson.
I will not be supporting this proposed zoning bylaw for third reading. The property has carried the equivalent of present resource zoning since prior to its purchase by the late Mr. Dennis McDougall. Mr. McDougall's application to the district for access to this property from the east, the Loggers Lane side, was denied by council in 1975. As a representative of the family estate has pointed out, our onerous development application process already in 1975 should provide opportunity for the district to exercise substantial influence on the prospect of and conditions of property development. Therefore, I'm inclined to agree with the estate's representative, Mr. Warren McDougall, that there should be no urgency or pressing need for this proposed rezoning at this time. It is a concern to me that an interpretation may be made that the rezoning will, quote, will make it impossible to sell to anyone other than to the district. That is, the interpretation that this is the district's intention. It is not. But the potential misperception, also that there are other undisclosed motivations, there are not. It's bothersome to me. We have a 5 matrix with OCD land use designation and zoning bylaw columns and highlighted non-alignment. But in real life, we don't need to assign our priorities using only such a matrix. I suggest land use is more complicated. I agree with Mr. Warren McDougall, albeit with a bit of hindsight and reflection, that this rezoning initiative is not a good use of our district time. All developers, all landowners have a deck of cards they're dealt with, or cards they're dealt with. I think in this case, it's not necessary for us to go in and change the rules of the game. Those cards are what they are for the landowner, for the developer. And we have substantial process to assist our goals, including this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor French.
Much like Councillor Anderson, I won't be supporting this one. This is a long-time Squamish family that has had that property for many years. Very challenging to do anything on that property with the current zoning, and I think this is the best example of the District of Squamish not doing a good job of communicating with those that are impacted by the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I will be supporting this. I think that we, in an effort to align with the OCP, we are trying to provide for uses that align with what was established a few years ago in consultation with the community. I think it's always risky to hold land, and there's no guarantees in that regard. I think it's appropriate to amend the use there, given the sensitivity of the environment and the challenges around developing that property. And again, I think it's a prudent thing to do to better align that piece of land with our OCP at this time. Any other comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillors Anderson and French opposed. Motion carries. We're on to section G. This is to amend zoning of large C4 properties. There are 3 motions in this section. I will begin with the District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw number 2500/2017, Amendment Bylaw C4 Parcels, number 2733/2020, be given 3rd reading. Is there someone like to move that? That is moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any comments on this? Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, I'll just briefly speak to this and think that it is really important to move forward in terms of protecting that larger commercial space for our grocery stores, and this applies to all of them in this area. We see time and time again as various cities and towns develop that you end up with these food deserts and not having clear access to good quality, easily accessible food spaces as real estate becomes more and more expensive. And so this is simply an effort to try and protect those really valuable assets for our community, and I think that's important to do here.
Thank you, Councillor Stoner. Any other comments? For myself, I think preserving the ability to have those grocery stores in our downtown to ensure that our downtown remains walkable especially given that there'll be a large seniors development adjacent to one of these parcels, is so important. And as Councillor Stoner says, you can end up with food deserts where you end up with very small scale or higher end and expensive grocery stores rather than preserving some of these larger format stores in our downtown. And I think it's important to do what we can now to preserve that going forward. So appreciate staff bringing this forward. And again, I believe the CAC policy amendment we'll contemplate this evening will address some of the concerns of the proponents on these zoning amendments. Any other comments? I will call the question on number 2733, 2020. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw. This is for 1301 to 1347 Pemberton Avenue, also known as the Chieftain Center, number 2729, 2020. Be given third reading. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, in this section, District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw 1200 Hunter Place, also known as Squamish Station, number 2730, 2020, be given third reading. That is moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Section H, this deals with allocating university housing units in the UH1 zone. First, for consideration, is District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw number 2500, 2017, Amendment Bylaw, University Area Policy Amendments number 2732, 2020, be given third reading. That is moved by Councillor Pettengill, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any comments on this one? I certainly like to state that making changes in the university area is important to me. It's something that I actually regret not accomplishing last term. I think it's so important to figure out a way to make the university area more walkable, more serviceable with transit, more vibrant for the university's precinct that is up there. And so I think these amendments help move us in that direction in a positive way. So we'll be supporting this motion. Councillor Pettengill.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. I think from my perspective, the previous zoning, it was a sort of a university in the middle of suburbia, and it's just kind of this island. And what I think is proposed now brings a lot more vibrancy and walkability and sorts of things that are really appealing to students, thinking back to when I was a student. And I hope this actually benefits and strengthens the university.
Thank you, Councillor Pettengill. Any further comments? So we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then related to that, District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011, amendment bylaw, university area amendments number 2720, 2020, be given third reading. That is moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Finally, section I, rezone undeveloped C9 parcels along Highway 99 to Highway Adventure Commercial C11. There are two bylaws before us. The first is the District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw number 2500, 2017, Amendment Bylaw, Large Format Retail, number 2747, 2020, be given third reading. As moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Are there any comments on this one? Councillor Pettengill.
Yeah, before the public hearing, my conversations with the proponent, my understanding is that they did not want to develop to the current zoning. and they had no intention of doing a big box, which is what it's zoned for. We've made that adjustment, and I still am struggling to understand why their resistance to moving away from the big box zoning when they say they don't want to put a big box there. So I think this is one, in either case, from the proponent's perspective, they may want to do some further work and further rezoning, but I think what we've proposed is more consistent with our OCP and what the community wants, and so I think it is, again, an all-around better starting place. We do need to change, but I also actually think the zoning proposed here is quite strong, so I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Pettengill. Councillor Stoner.
Not to sound repetitive, but I will also be supporting this, and I think it falls in line with all these other rezonings that we're aiming to align with the OCP policy here, and it may not be perfect. This is one of the proponents who came forward and said in the public hearing that if there was an opportunity to kind of pause midway through, that they would like to further these negotiations and come up with something that was more fit for purpose. I think the challenge there is that if we do that with every single one of these developers mid-process, we don't have the time and the capacity to do that at this very moment. And so that really does need to be a proponent or developer-led process. So I'm happy to support this and that it gets us a little bit closer to our OCP vision. Does not stop the proponent from coming back and further having conversations with staff and council and the community about changing that a little bit if they think that there's a need to do so. So I don't want this to seem like this is a closed door, but it is one step of an administrative process to bring our zoning bylaw in line with the OCP. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I share the observations and perspectives of Councillor Stoner on this. It has been an illustrative dialogue with this particular developer during the comments made during public hearing and otherwise in conversation some months back. Two themes have emerged for me. One is that we need to understand better our business parks, and business parks in plural, and towns in BC in plural. We share issues with all sorts of places, and this particular developer has experience in properties elsewhere, of course. But these issues are not unique to Squamish. I think we have much to learn. And therefore, my first preference would be for to leave it at law at second reading so we can learn together with this developer. But I do share Councillor Stoner's considerations on this. The other theme that emerged for me is that we need to understand better and make better efforts to understand our inventory of tourist commercial lands. We have lost tourist commercial lands over the past decade near the highway, and we need to take a step back perhaps in our dialogue with this developer and other landowners to understand better that resource and how we can work together with landowners to take best advantage of it. So I do hope that the developer will be sees a positive future for future engagement with the district on the fate of these lands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor French?
Yeah, thank you. And to my council colleagues that have spoken on this one, thank you. I agree that this is an experienced developer with some really great potential future ideas for this property. And the point that they're looking at rezoning anyway, whether it stay as is or we shift it into the C11. I coming into this, thought that I couldn't support this one, but upon reflection, I see the wisdom of the words of my council colleagues. I will be supporting this one, and I'm looking forward to working with this developer to develop this key property along Highway 99 that currently sits as a wild lumber patch. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor French. Any further comments? Yes, Councillor Race.
Sorry, there we go. And I'm supporting this. This is one of the properties where I think arguably the value increases with this rezoning because it gets rid of the requirements of the large big box type of development. I remember before I got on council, about 3 or 4 years before I got on council, there was a proposal brought forward by the previous landowner to develop it into smaller units. And that was turned down by the council, who didn't want it competing with the downtown area and wanted to reserve it for big box. And this landowner has now owned it for probably close to 10 years. But it's obviously one of the things that has kept us from coming to development. And now I think we will see some action on that particular property, and I think that's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. I think for me, I'll be supporting this. I think the work of aligning the zoning bylaw with the OCP is, again, the sort of belt and suspenders approach to make sure that we get more of what we want and less of what we don't. And, you know, even when proponents say, well, we want to bring you something that isn't a big box store, land changes hands. And we are now in a very uncertain time in our economy. And so I think it's prudent to take a cautious approach and move the zoning closer to what we do want and further away from the large format retail, which didn't align with the OCP. So I concur with my colleagues. I think we're closer to what we do want there. I think this is a really valuable piece of highway frontage, and look forward to this proponent bringing forward a proposal for something in that zone. I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw, Adventure Highway Commercial Zone C11 for 39300 Discovery Way, number 2728, 2020, be given third reading. As moved by Councillor Stoner and seconded by Councillor Bird. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you to our staff for putting these amendments together for us to consider. Thank you to the public who weighed in the public hearing and participating in our electronic public hearing. We are now on to item 10, staff reports. First up is the public hearing report about the zoning update we just had. So council, we just need to move receipt of this report. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. On the 20th of July, we did ask staff to bring back the CAC policy for our review. That is item 10A2. And staff, is there a brief presentation on this? So I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Fletcher. Councillor Pettengill? Hold on a second. Councillor Pettengill, did you have your hand up there?
Yeah, I just had a small request. There has been, I think, a lot of confusion, and these processes are complicated. So I'm just wondering if you would be able to reiterate for us the rules around when you can or can't have more discussions about this. My understanding is that we still are not allowed to receive new information, that any correspondence needs to go to staff on these zoning bylaws we just voted on.
I'll ask Ms. Arthurs to respond as our corporate officer and acting CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Councillor Pettengill, you sound like you do have a good understanding, because you're exactly correct. The council is not permitted to receive any new information, no new conversations, correspondence, emails until adoption, after adoption.
Thank you for that clarifying question, Councillor Pettengill. I will now go back to Ms. Fletcher to present the 2020 zoning bylaw update CAC policy.
Thank you. Just waiting for the presenter role here. Thank you. All right. So Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessie Fletcher, planner with Community Planning. With me tonight are Matt Gunn, planner as well, and Brian Daly, subdivision development coordinator, to help answer questions if there are any. We're here tonight to present an update to the community amenity contribution policy as part of the stage 1 of the zoning bylaw update. So staff first introduced the CAC amendment policy at the July 7, 2020 special council meeting. The intention of this policy was to recognize previously permitted residential density on existing properties and any future consideration of development where voluntary community amenity contributions are offered by the applicant for those properties impacted by the 2020 zoning bylaw update. The policy was not adopted. At the public hearing for the 2020 zoning bylaw stage 1 update held on July 28th, Council moved to bring the CAC policy amendment back for consideration. In order to more closely link the proposed CAC policy amendment to district priorities regarding climate change and affordable housing, staff proposed updated policy language that specifically references these 2 items. The changes to the proposed policy amendment are in red on the screen. In addition to those changes, the amended policy now specifically references the bylaws that are affected by the policy. Referencing the bylaws within the policy better ensures that only the affected lands are eligible for the policy. The screen highlights the parcels that are affected by the policy, which include Crumpit North, Newport Ridge, Aspen East, Squamish Station Mall, and the Chieftain Center. The amended policy now highlights the desired alignment with 3 OCC policies that reflect the priorities listed in Council's strategic plan, specifically in the area of the planet and our environment. These 3 policies are listed on the screen. This exceeds the existing CAC policy, which does not seek additional alignment with the district's climate change goals outside of contributions to active transportation and park space. The traditional CAC track gives applicants the opportunity of pursuing either the affordable housing tract or the cash and lieu for critical amenities tract. Based on Council's motion, the revised CAC policy amendment is contingent on applicants pursuing and exceeding the affordable housing tract of the CAC policy, which is well aligned with Council's strategic plan, specifically within the priority area, housing affordability, and diversity. The current policy seeks to secure a minimum of 10% of proposed principal units as on-site affordable housing managed under a housing agreement for new for-sale residential rezoning. The updated policy recommends exceeding that target. Staff recommends that the following language be added to the District of Squamish Community Amenity Contribution Policy, or alternatively, that a similar policy be added without referencing the affected policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fletcher. Council, are there any questions? Hold on a second. I just made you all disappear. Councilor Bettengill.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Is there any time limit on this? So, this might make sense to me if the developer was intending on developing something in the next year, but if for whatever reason nothing gets developed for 15 years, I'm not sure this policy is still relevant. So, how do we handle that?
Go ahead, Ms. Fletcher.
Through the mayor, in the event that somebody came forward in 10 years, if for example, council at the time could evaluate whether or not this policy was still applicable. Otherwise, the way to handle that would be to amend the policy in 4 years or in 3 years moving forward. Policies are generally revisited and amended as time goes by, so there may be opportunities to revisit that in the future.
And it's similar to that, in a shorter time frame, we could theoretically have more rezonings. We're in the first phase of 3 phases currently of rezonings. So I guess then if one of those other rezonings did something further, then we come back and revisit this policy again?
Yeah, that's correct. We could revisit the policy.
Okay. And is there any reason why we might not handle this in sort of a a one-off sort of time-constrained resolution, sort of guidance to future council as opposed to incorporating it in the CAC policy.
Mr. Velaniskas?
Thank you. Through there, the policy is important in that it guides staff's recommendations as well, not just council's actions. So as long as the direction is contained in the policy, then, you know, when staff process and review the applications, they will bring all the relevant policies to council up to date to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Herford?
Thank you. I have thoughts along a similar line, and I appreciate the intent, and I was hesitant to bring anything forward that would necessarily drive a timeline for development to get in on this sort of cash in on this policy while it was relevant. But I wonder if putting some language in there around, you know, the next OCP, you know, a grace period until the next OCP is adopted, or something along those lines that sort of shows that there's acknowledges that there's future processes that may yet again affect the densities and well, the land use in general. Is that something that's a bit easier to tie together rather than have it sit out there as a standalone sort of amendments? Any thoughts about that?
Mr. Gunn?
Yeah, certainly that is something that we could address. It probably would be hard to do right in the moment because that policy is actually fairly tightly worded. So we probably have to go away and do that and come back to that. It is possible. On the flip side, the CAC policy, being that it is a policy and not a bylaw, is very easy to amend. And so it's the kind of thing that if we were engaged in an OCP process, we could easily bring in at that time. And luckily the CAC policy will go through numerous amendments over time. And, you know, I think it will be something that staff can look at it and bring up for changes as time goes by. Given that it's policy, it's quite an easy one touch to make changes to.
Councilor Herford?
Thank you. I appreciate that, and that gives me some comfort. I do want to make sure that that the end goals are achieved here, which is to bring these properties into alignment with the OCP and current policies. And if we set this, my concern is if we continue on this path without making those amendments down the road, that they'll sort of always be one step behind and operating under different rules and regulations than the rest. But I'm happy with this. I think I'll be supportable at this point, but I don't want to see this one sort of lag out there into that, you know, 13 plus zone, and that is a real concern given that the properties haven't had development thus far. So it could very well be another long stretch of time, and the policy then starts losing its relevance. So that's my only concern at this point. But I understand its value today.
Thanks, Councilor Herford. Any other questions for staff? I was wondering if we're going to bring the CAC policy back generally, because I actually liked some of the amendments, and one could suggest that everyone should be providing more than 10% of affordable housing, and could be adhering more closely to our GHG aspirations. So I'm just wondering if there's actually an opportunity to apply this more broadly in the future. Mr. Vellner.
Yes, absolutely. The CAC policy, I think we have been updating it almost on an annual basis. So I certainly see that, you know, the new climate action plan and things like that are going to be playing a role in this update. I don't think we have a date in mind yet, but it's something that we can take a look at for next year.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. There is a motion in front of us. Councillor Stoner,
I'll move the staff recommendation.
is there a seconder? That's seconded by Councillor French. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Stoner? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was very happy to see this come back and a motion during the public hearing to bring this back for consideration. In my earlier comments, I said that I didn't hear any strong rationale for why the RM5 zone was less affordable than the RS1 in order to deliver southern planning in alignment with the OCP vision. But I failed to speak to the proponent Holborn's presentation that they provided on the impact that this could potentially have financially without the CAC policy change. And so I wanted to acknowledge the detailed feedback that proponent provided on the tangible impact that this decision could have. And I was very happy to bring back this policy in consideration of mitigating that impact a little bit. So thanks to staff for reconsideration, and also support the mayor's suggestion that we bring back the CAC policy more broadly next year for further review. Thanks.
Councillor French and Councillor Herford.
Thank you. Speaking in support of the motion, I think this is a really great example of staff working with council and then landowners and developers working with staff and council to take a piece of legislation that needs some work, put the work into it, and then produce something that's just superior to what originally came to us. And I, too, support the idea of bringing CACs broadly back for some discussion. Thank you.
Councillor Herford, then Councillor Petgill.
Thank you. When we first discussed this in early July, I wasn't supportive, and it was the feedback from the proponent that really highlighted what this piece could do and what that meant exactly for the properties. And I'm happy to support it at this time. I am hesitant, as outlined earlier, for this to sort of outlive any other policies as it goes, but I'm happy to see this, and I hope this lessens the burden for on those properties. So happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Petgill.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm comfortable with this, as is. I see the CAC policy as a general set of policies. It really speaks to, I think, general principles and values. And then we're jumping to a very specific case, which to me just seems very out of place. And so I would much rather deal with this with a one-off recommendation or something. I mean, the CAC policy is just guidance. We can adjust it and so on. So I'd rather sort of separate out that guidance. Hearing the comments so far, I may not carry the vote, so I will look forward to adjusting the CAC policy in a year, and hopefully between sub-area planning, rezoning, and CAC policy adjustments, we can take this out. But it does make me uncomfortable to have deal with a very specific circumstance in what I see should be a general sort of principle-driven policy.
Thank you, Councillor Petgill. Any other comments? I will support this. I think my hesitation in early July was that I was worried that we would lose some of the key priorities in the negotiations with the more general policy that was proposed. And I think providing affordable housing is non-negotiable for where our community's at right now. And the fact that it would get built as part of the CAC contribution is very important. So I appreciate staff bringing back this amendment and referencing policies in the OCP that do capture more of our green building aspirations and help us address some of the climate policies. So I think that, together with the step code adoption timeline that we're on, creates progress in that regard. And I think bringing back the CAC policy in 2021 for review would be timely, especially since DCCs have gone up as well with the adoption of the DCC bylaw. So I will support this. Any other comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Pettengill opposes. Motion carries. Okay. We're now on to item 10B1. This is the Recreation Services Fall Update. This is for information to council and to give our community an opportunity to hear about our facility reopening. And I will turn it over to you, Ms. Guest. Is that right? All right.
So where I'm going. How are we doing?
Yep, we can see that.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and for those in attendance, my name is Devon Black, and I'm the Acting Director of Recreation Services here at the District of Squamish. And as we move forward with some key fall dates, we'd like to take a moment to update Council since we last spoke on June 23rd. Of note, this is not a 2021 plan. This is a restart plan that sees recreation services through the rest of 2020, and that 2021 is being considered within the budget cycle at varying operations. If I may to advance my presentation, great. If I may take a moment to update Council on some of the summer 2020 numbers. We had 80 participants at Bike Camp this summer, which is 100% of capacity over 2019. We had 200 summer camp participants, which is approximately 50% of a standard year. And our new, as part of our Programs in the Park portfolio of programs, saw 729 full walking participants, which is an average of 45 participants per week, which is very exciting. We've almost doubled our NeuroFit participants, which is a highly specialized and important program for recreation services as it services many members of our vulnerable population. 10 weeks of summer camp, 2 more than a standard year, and 16 weeks plus and counting for programs in the park. As always, for context and research, a number of agencies and their guiding documents have contributed to recreation services restart programs. Of special mention, the BCRPA, BC Recreation and Parks Association. MIA and V Sport have all played a major role in ensuring that our staff and community are ready to recreate. Once again, the criteria for resuming recreation services and reopening facilities. This is what was first presented to Council and has continued to provide a compass for decision making as staff weigh options. Specifically, items 2 and 3 play more of a role as 1 and 4 become greater certainty and comfort. Recreation Services is currently in phase 4 of our expanding program. As
presented to the community previously, levels 1 and 2 of the service restoration onboarding are characterized by the opening of outdoor park amenities and the restoration of some indoor services, showers, washrooms. Levels 3 and 4 are characterized by the reopening of community facilities and the restoration of broader ranges of programs and services. So again, right now we are at level 4 in phase 3 of the Province of BC's Restart program. The staggered approach has been set up to come back online with operational plans giving staff and community time to dial up or dial down prior to the next amenity coming back online. With all COVID safety plans complete and staff training done, staff are excited about welcoming our community back to Brennan Park beginning September 8th. Of special note, staff have all been trained and in-services provided, so they have become familiar with new standard operations as well as the COVID safety plans. Training has included a wealth of information and knowledge on these new procedures, as well as customer service tricks and trades to keep our community happy and healthy in this time of maybe different experience. Just quickly, user groups. VIA Sport is the province's arm of the amateur sports system, and this is one of the more complex partnerships and channels that Recreation Services works in. So to follow the chart across the top, VIA Sport engages the Public Health Office, and the Public Health Office approves the VIA Sport guidelines that directs the safe return to sport for PSOs. PSOs are provincial sport organizations. The outcome of VIA Sport has been the guiding document for all PSOs, titled Return to Play Guidelines. Once each provincial sport organization creates their own specific return to play plans and guidelines, they go to the local sport organizations, or LSOs. Examples of provincial sport organizations are BC Soccer, BC Swimming, BC Hockey, etc., etc. Here's where we come in with the local sport organizations. LSOs create their own individual COVID safety plans in accordance with their PSO guidelines and individual facility limitations and capacity. So within Recreation Services, there's 3 streams. There's user group COVID safety plans, for example, this field, where it's really their COVID safety plans that drive their interactions with the community. Then there's our COVID safety plans, which speak to things like operating the pool and individual programs that the District of Squamish Recreation Services offer. And then there's together safety plans, where there's overlap between the 2 organizations, so that, and that is where we work together to bring, to offer return to play options for our local sport organizations and communities. Moving on, I use the term Brennan Park Recreational Facility right now as the amenity, as the umbrella term to speak to our indoor amenities. So initially, Brennan Park will be opening between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. to service things like swimming pools, showers, and ramps. We encourage our community to participate through phone and email service, and only come by for drop-in service on an as-needed basis. Door greeters will be available for health screenings at both entrances of Brennan Park, and minimal lobby amenities will be available. Reduced soft seating, Unfortunately, no air hockey or foosball tables will be provided at this time, and staff have done their best to reduce any sort of high-touch services. In general, recreation service programming can be defined by drop-in, low-barrier free programs still are offered outside. As soon as we come within the facility, that's when registrations for programs is critical for the ability to know who and when staff are interacting with and who and what our capacity is at the building at any time. The gymnasium offers limited sport and activities, which we'll talk more about in the coming slides. This is probably a statement that reflects across all recreation services, but aquatics is going to look and feel a little bit different for the next little while. Our initial pool opening hours are from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. And the schedule that's 7 days a week, and the schedule will provide lap swim, bubble swim, and aquafit times for our community to sign up in advance for. You can see how these categories have been broken down to create maximums within kind of each area, and then overall maximums for the facility. Lessons, private lessons, and parent and child swim lessons will come back online in October. A change to swimming lesson environment is that parents must remain in the water and participate the entire class, whereas instructors will lead lessons on the deck. I can provide assurance and confidence to council that these are all best practices that we are seeing operating in varying degrees within the Lower Mainland and communities. Programs, indoor registered programs will mostly begin starting September 21st, and staff have created the following hierarchy in order to return to service. Therapeutic services, then fitness and exercise, followed by educational, and then social. So what we're going to see under the therapeutic is, again, the continued commitment for NeuroFit to operate in a safe and functional environment. We will be expanding that into aquafit and partner agencies such as Healthy Pregnancy Outreach Programs and other partner agencies, both Vancouver Coastal Health and Sea to Sky Community Services. Our focus has been to, within this framework, to return both senior and family focus to the programming in these individual categories. Educational, we acknowledge that this is where things start to get a little bit tricky with distancing and capacity, and transitioning curriculum into a safe COVID environment. And then finally, social will mainly remain outside. Traditional social programming like bridge, cards, knitting groups, and things like that are quite tricky and potentially dangerous to bring online in a COVID environment. Operationally, staff are prepared to pivot to day camps should the community require it, and it aligns with the 4 criteria previously discussed for resuming service. So the arena and the ice rink will be ready for operation on September 28th. Currently, the arena lobby has a capacity of 15, which means right now that staff are working with user groups to figure out ways to get the number of kids available on the ice that the local sport organizations and governing bodies deem safe. The pinch point really is the configuration of the facility, and that's where staff are working very closely with user groups to come up with safe and innovative ways to get as many kids back to sport that are wanting to. Public skate times will be delayed until later October. By then, we hope to have our schedule a little bit more fleshed out, and that staff are in a position where they can offer skate rentals. That's not an operational possibility at the moment. The 55 Activity Center will open when operational capacity with programs is reached at Brennan Park. Existing seniors programs that I have previously discussed in this presentation will come back online in Brennan Park and then transition over to 55 when we have hit that programming maximum here at Brennan Park. The estimated time for this is late fall, early winter. I realize I may have gone through a lot of information very quickly, but in summary, Recreation Services is very much looking forward to welcoming back our community into our facilities in this phased approach. Staff will continue to communicate as services and programs continue to restart and evolve as the changing needs of the community during COVID and beyond are contemplated. We recognize this is a lot, and we will endeavor to communicate efficiently and directly. Staff certainly welcome any feedback and consideration to further promote a safe and happy recreation environment both in and outside of our facility. Thanks for the time, Council, and I would welcome any questions and comments.
Thank you, Ms. Guess. Councilor French.
Thank you. And I just noted that in the fitness and exercise box, there were a number of examples, and two in particular weren't there that jumped out at me. I maybe don't want to necessarily zero down on every activity and what's going on with it, but pickleball, indoor pickleball, which has been very popular, and I believe was happening 3 days a week for the pickleball folks.
Yeah.
Did you what's happening with that?
Absolutely. We have close ties with Pickleball Squamish, and we're confident they can remain outside enjoying their play for September, October, and that we will begin more fulsome discussions with them for November and December.
Okay, right. So I'm just doing some math here. Outdoors, wherever we can do it.
Outdoors, wherever we can do it.
Okay, and then if I could have a follow-up. There's been some criticism around the speed and pace at which recreation is being reopened, and I want to, high level, get thoughts from you about how organized our volunteer work organizations are. Have they been cooperative? Have they acted quickly in getting their plans together, and have the plans been workable? Just can you give some insight into that relationship and how those groups are functioning in these challenging times, recognizing they're basically all volunteers?
Yeah, thank you, Councilor French, and that's an excellent point to end on. Staff recognize and therefore offer a lot of capacity for these organizations who have committed so many man-hours to our community and providing support opportunities. I'm going to go there. I'm going to say Dr. Bonnie Hennis talking, for some we're moving too fast, and for some we're moving too slow, and for some we're moving just at the right pace, and that's probably accurate both for recreation services and for the user groups. Depending on, they're still trying to figure out demand as well, particularly for the fall sports. What is parents' appetite to participate in this environment, and what does it look like for a schedule for the remaining 2020?
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Other questions? Councillor Hereford, and then Councillor Pettengill, and then Councillor Stoneman.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. I really appreciate all the work that's gone into it, and well, not just the update, but the things you're updating us on. So a lot of work to make sure that we can deliver the services our community wanted in a safe way. And I think it really highlighted to me how these plans, right from Dr. Henry on down to our community returning to play their favorite sport in their favorite facility, how complex it is to scale these for our the plans, the restrictions, and thus the plans for each facility, and and it's really hard to compare any one facility to to a neighboring jurisdiction that might have a completely different facility and demand and space needs and so on. So I appreciate all the work of sort of compiling all these regulations and applying them to our facilities here and looking after our community. And I do think we're in a sweet spot where it's maybe a little slow for some and a little fast for others. And that's probably where we're going to be for a while. So thank you so much for the work. I look forward to seeing our community return to their favorite program in our favorite space. Thank you.
Yes.
If I may go back to Councillor French's question just for a moment to provide another example. Our user groups, as well as recreation services, received an update from VIA Sport last Thursday on their return to sport guidelines. Let's call it 2.0. And so with that new set of guidelines, is a domino effect down, and that leaves, we hear about it at the same time as the PSOs hear about it, at the same time as the local sport organizations hear about it. So everyone is immediately looking at the new set of guidelines and adjusting the work that had previously been done to fit within these new sets of guidelines. So it causes a bit of a wave of work for staff to support these user groups in figuring out how to interpret and work with these new guidelines. And in some instances, there have been major differences within a week.
Thanks for that clarification. Councillor Hereford? You're done?
No, I already went. I said my thing. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Pettengill?
Thank you. After our presentation earlier today about the amount of staff required to have public attendance at Brennan Park, to support that, it's really striking how much extra resources it is required to just do the things that we've kind of come to take for granted. So I am holding that in mind with my question. We have received a fair bit of correspondence from seniors concerned that the Activity 55 is not available at the moment. And I was, at Municipal Hall for the meeting today, and I noticed we have a sign with priority access for seniors for priority service. we're doing that, or a lot of businesses, I believe, are doing that. I think we talked about that at Fairmont Park, so I'd just like to understand or hear your thoughts about how we're balancing these things. So is the priority access to swimming at all for seniors? Is that what we've contemplated? And, you know, I understand the staffing capacity and so on, but have we looked at things like transit and so on? Because part of the appeal, I think, of Activity 55 is the location. And so can you just speak a bit to how we've looked at those issues?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pettingill. I will circle back to the 4 criteria that we have filtered our decision-making through on return to service, provincial health order, reasonable demand for service, financial viability, and safe environment for staff and patrons. And so some of the seniors programming that are coming back on, like the fitness-related things, Men on the Move, yoga, salsa, chair, aerobics, things like that, that are predominantly skewed to seniors, although are open to 19 plus. They take place during the day, and so it's really just consolidating the programming into Brenton Park, where we can take advantage of the operational efficiencies before we have the resource stretch of having two facilities operational. Fall is really going to be very interesting for staff to understand a little bit more, as the variability and unpredictability of what we're going into is really an unknown, and we need to spend some time understanding and seeing how and who is comfortable and eager to return to recreation. To circle back, our programming in pool hours, so the way lane swim versus bubble swim has been scheduled, is that the assumption that staff make is that, and the demographic that we have previously seen participate in the pool, generally Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 2, have been of the older demographic, the adult plus demographic. And so if demand warrants it, then we will absolutely look at a dedicated seniors time. But right now, we would like to see what community demand is before putting restrictions on that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill asked my question around the phasing in of the 55, so I'll bypass on that one. I appreciate the conservative approach there in terms of really assessing what our community is ready to come back for. I think it'll be interesting to see in September, especially as a whole of society flex into increased risk and interaction through schools. How does that then interact as well in terms of people's decision making for recreation programming? So I think that this is an appropriate approach for the time being. I may have missed it, but what is our intention in terms of maintaining as much outdoor space or outdoor activity as possible and into changing inclement to weather? I'm thinking of Ocean Pavilion. Are there other spaces and or potentially resource requests that may come forward in the 2021 budget in terms of how we facilitate more outdoor programming?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Stoner. Programs in the park will run for as long as demand warrants it. And so we fully expect to see the numbers drop off when we start to get into late October, early November. And we will take the pulse of those taking advantage of that programming and see what they're looking for in terms of if we can help service them through indoor programming or if their comfort level still resides in being outside or pausing it until the spring weather. OCM absolutely is an asset that Recreation Services is looking at better utilizing, both within our programming model as well as our partners. We've had a number of partners reach out to see what a potential long-term schedule could look like for that, as well as there have been several grants, and 2 specific grant opportunities made available through Infrastructure Canada, as well as another one through Infrastructure Canada whose name is escaping me. But we plan on partnering with Steglich Community Services to apply for COVID resiliency in the not-profit sector so that community can recreate in new and interesting ways outside.
Awesome. And just one quick follow-up in terms of timeline. I don't always like to compare ourselves to other cities and municipalities, but Vancouver also is not opening their ice rink until the 3rd week of September. They'll be opening their indoor pools September 12th, and so I think that it helps put it into context as we all continue to work on this provincially. I think your presentation, Ms. Guest, about the number of interactions of different layers of safety protocols was a really good example of how this is challenging, and so I think that is, from my perspective, a reasonable timeline. So thanks for the ongoing work.
Ms. Guest?
I absolutely hear the community chatter. I will say that the user groups that work one-on-one with staff here at Brennan Park have been exceptional in their commitment to returning to sport and working with staff. And I do believe that they see themselves as together we stand, and really kind of an in-it-to-win it approach. But there are a lot of hands in the pot.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments at this time? Councillor Pettengill?
Just what I want to raise that sort of been in the back of my mind, and it's background to seniors, and thinking about my parents. You know, I understand parents figuring out how to get back to work and childcare and what if kids get sick and dealing with all those challenges. I think with seniors, from what I've seen, there's a particular challenge of isolation. The complications from COVID seem to be more serious with seniors still. And so, you know, they're not able to see their grandkids in person, their families, and whereas kids, you know, despite all the challenges, they're still with their parents and with their families. And so, you know, I do worry a bit, do we have a cohort of seniors that maybe haven't used rec services before, haven't thought these, it might not come and demand it, might not show up, but really kind of need it more than ever. And so I think that's something we should maybe keep in the back of our mind and try and watch out for as we're planning and moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pettengill. Anything else on this, Council? Ms. Guest, if you can thank everyone on your team for their hard work on this and for their commitment starting next Tuesday as we open the doors. I want to thank all the user groups that have been working with our rec staff. This is not anything any of us were trained to deal with. It's not like you volunteer to become the president of a local sports organization and think you'll be doing pandemic planning in your spare time while you're juggling your work and your kids. And oh, by the way, now you're responsible for pandemic planning and return to sports. So there is a tremendous amount of volunteer effort going into this return to play, and I appreciate all of the parents that are involved as coaches and as board members that are working with us on this. I said this to the community early on as businesses were reopening in the pandemic. We may not have this 100% correct, And there may be feedback that you want to provide, and I just ask people to provide it in a way that is constructive and helpful and not critical. This is not something we've done before, and we are absolutely trying to do our best. But we are open to your feedback. If there's a way we can improve, then certainly let us know as you re-engage again in our services and in our facilities. And I know that our staff will do their level best to address those concerns and make improvements where we can. But the reality is we can't go back to what was at this time. And so we have to adjust to what our new normal is. And that's going to look different, certainly when you walk in the doors of Brennan Park on September 8th. But I do appreciate the community's patience and look forward to their feedback. And it will be nice to have people back in our facilities again and connecting safely with other members of the community through these activities. So appreciate the update, and I'm sure this won't be your last update as we move forward into the fall season. So thank you so much for juggling all the balls that are in the air right now and working on a plan to get everyone back safely to their activities.
Thank you, Council.
All right, Council, we are on to our consent agenda. I just want to check in. Does anybody need a 5-minute break just to stretch, or do you want to just power through here? Councillor Anderson, would like a break? Yeah, okay. So why don't we take a break till 8:25, and then we'll come back and finish strong on the consent agenda and the rest of the matters. So we're in recess till 8:25. Okay, we're back in our special business meeting of Tuesday, September 1st. We are now on item 11, consent agenda. So Council, if there's anything in the consent agenda which would present a conflict of interest for you, or any letters that you need to pull, or minutes, now is the time to do it. Oh, I thought we were going to get away with it. Councillor Pettengill and then Councillor Anderson.
I had 3, 12, 19, and 27. Or sorry, 27 is yeah, and 27.
27 is referred to staff.
Okay, so it's 3, 7, 3, 7, and 19. I need to practice my Roman numerals.
Okay, do you still want to speak to 27?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Anderson?
Sure, I'd like to pull number 17, please, the letter from Dave Caldwell regarding center barrier weeding.
Okay. So we will deal with those under item 13. Can someone move the rest of the consent agenda, please? As moved by Councillor Herbert, seconded by Councillor French. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have correspondence, action requested. The letter from R. Sati re unsafe road conditions, that this be referred to the Director of Engineering for follow-up and response. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Race. You look like you're moving your hand around. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That the letter from R. O'Grady, the size of carriage houses in Valley Cliff, be referred to the Director of Planning for follow-up and response. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by me. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Correspondence regarding the Squamish Training Dike road closures for council consideration. What page that's on? Anybody?
476. 476. 476.
Councilor Stoner?
Yeah, I did email Ms. Toll about this correspondence to try and seek some further clarity, just on the length of timing for the proposed closures. They seemed quite broad, and I figured that with the construction there may be some further nuancing that they could do in terms of the windows. I have not received a response to that. But the timeline has now elapsed, so the August dates are now elapsed, and September is now on our doorstep, so I'm not sure if there's anything much more that we can do in this process.
So you want to move receipt?
Yes, I'll move receipt.
Seconded by Councilor French. Any comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. A letter from N. Davidovich about extra service on Route 262. Be referred to the Director of Engineering for follow-up and response. By Councilor French, seconded by. Anybody gonna second that? Not seeing a seconder.
Move receipt.
Move receipt. Moved by Councilor Stoner, seconded by Councilor French. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Letter from the Squamish and District Forestry Association regarding forestry land strategy and wood waste working group. That this be referred to the Director of Planning and Economic Development and Engineering for follow-up and response. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That the correspondence from T. Saxby be considered by Council. Staff are telling me that I missed one.
I don't see one. What number?
Number 5.
5.
Who, please?
Bear attractants.
On my agenda, the bear attractants one was moved up to the consent agenda. Is that the one from T. Kerr? Yeah, it's in the consent agenda as item 32. We have an amended agenda. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Item 6, the letter from T. Saxby. This is for council's consideration. Again, the date has passed, I believe, for this, but Councilor Pettengill?
Yeah, I wanted to suggest an alternate action, and this would actually deal with what I was going to raise in item 27. So make kill two birds with one stone. But there were a couple gaps in the EA's assessment, which is that Gibson and Bowen both did not support the extension, and that is missed in the EA's letter. So I think despite the feedback date being passed, that is feedback we should provide to the EAO. There was no recommendations or conclusions from the EAO or what they anticipate those will be, or if they're not providing any. There's none of that summary, and I think that's worthwhile. And I think we have communicated to the EAO and Woodfiber and so on before that the engagement in this whole process has been challenging. We got this information when council wasn't sitting, and so I think it's worth reiterating some dissatisfaction with the process and the timing of it. So I would propose that we write a letter to the EAO just outlining those points, but not asking for an extension.
Is there a seconder? Councilor Herford? You're seconding?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. Councilor Pettengill, I don't necessarily want to take responsibility for other municipalities whose views weren't represented in the summary. So I feel like they should be writing their own feedback that they were missed in the summary. They would have got it as members of the working group, if they were members of the working group. So
I think,
go ahead.
yeah, if I may, I mean, my perspective is it strengthens our position that we stated when we can outline that the whole region is actually the same opinion as us. So I see this not so much taking responsibility for their statements, but making sure that ours are highlighted and that the strength and the consistency of our own position is very clear to the EAO. And again, I think, from my perspective at least, this is another example of where the process is falling short. And I understand that, you know, I'm not asking for an extension, but I do think it's important to keep reminding the EAO that we expect better from the process.
So could you summarize again which points you would like that letter to encompass for council?
Yeah, just the fact that Gissens and Bowen also did not support the extension as proposed, that it was missing a summary of the recommendations or conclusions that the EAO would pass on to government, so no ability to comment on what those recommendations might be, and the I guess I would say repeated concern over the timing of the process and the inability of citizens and municipal government to engage in the process.
Any other comments? Councilor Herford?
Yeah, my concerns are around I have many concerns. I'm trying to figure out wading through which ones it's our job to highlight and which jobs other jurisdictions to highlight. But this is the second time that on this file that we've had something come to us while we're on the break in the August break. And if the consultation is meant to be meaningful, then that simply isn't acceptable. And I think that's worth mentioning, regardless of which outcome. Whatever outcome various members of the council desire, I think that our ability to chime in on with whatever that is well, it's hindered, or we're purposely cut out of the process. And I do think that that's worth highlighting. I do agree with the mayor that maybe it's the other jurisdictions' responsibility to point out that their opinion wasn't taken into consideration. But I do think that at every, if there is a whole meeting process, and whichever process it is that we're dealing with, then it's fair to highlight that from our perspective. So I'm for saying something as to, in favor of saying something, and I'm open to hearing exactly where we can land on what it is that we should, what we should say. But I think that just accepting it and remaining silent on it, I don't think is really a good course of action, regardless of where you stand on, where you happen to stand on this particular project.
Councilor Stoner?
Yeah, I personally would support sending a letter at this point. My perspective on this is that we did have a chance to provide some comment on the application, but if there was something glaringly misfactual that was specific to our submission, I would feel strongly about correcting that. But at this point, although the timing was notably off, we were on recess. Not all councils recess through April. They should know by now that we do, but they may not have. It's not common practice across all municipalities. And further to that, our staff were working whether they had a chance to look at this or not. I'm clear. Actually, I'm not. Mr. Braxton did provide a reply, if I remember correctly, on item number 27. And so as part of the technical working group, we did have a chance, perhaps it wasn't council per se to weigh in, but our staff did have a chance to weigh into that process. So I feel comfortable enough with that at this point. In terms of accepting a summary of recommendations, that is not typical practice. From what I know of the BCAO, in terms of their draft assessment, they combine the information that they've received over the process of the public consultation and technical working group, and they provide that summary of the draft, and then they go back and write their recommendations. So this is the process as I know it. I think that there was a misstep in terms of its timing, but I don't think it warrants our time and effort in terms of another letter to the EAO.
I certainly would support a letter around process and timing. When I sat on the advisory body for the new legislation, this is something that I brought up, that local governments and especially regional districts who are involved that meet monthly find it impossible almost every time to meet the 30-day timeline. So I think it bears repeating, even if it is past the deadline. I think it bears repeating that feedback, that local government, often with agenda planning and especially regional districts, find it very difficult to put something in front of council within the 30-day timeline. And I believe the EAO often wants it to just move through staff and not allow it to get to the political level, which is why they keep the 30-day timeline. So I would be supportive of that part of the letter, but I'm not going to take responsibility for other municipalities, and as they are following their process as laid out in their procedures manual, as far as I can tell. So I wouldn't expect a summary or conclusions at this time. Councilor Van Gogh.
Thank you. So with the feedback I've heard, then I would propose amending, or maybe a self-friendly amendment, I'm not sure what the right way is, but that we provide feedback to the EAO, just reiterating our concern about the process for municipal governments, and leave it at that.
Will you second that, Councilor Herford, or no? Seconded by Councilor Herford. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Finally, a letter from I. Tostenson, request for support for expanding on patio permissions. I believe that our economic development staff are already in the process of working on engaging with the community, so I was going to move receipt of this letter. I'm expecting that we'll get a report back about the next phase of our patio extensions before too long. Councilor Stoner?
I was going to refer it to economic development just because there's a number of suggestions and ideas as to how we may be able to facilitate this for businesses. So just for their consideration in development of that, I prefer to refer it to ECDEV.
Sure. Councilor French seconds that. Okay, so this letter will be forwarded to economic development for consideration. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll go back to the correspondence that was pulled from the consent agenda. I will go in numerical order. Councilor Pettengill, letter 3 from Mr. Caldwell, climate change correspondence.
Yeah, and I wanted to refer this to staff, I think probably planning, but I'll leave it at staff in general. I think there's some interesting ideas in here, and just wanted to have staff have a look at it.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Letter 12, Town of Comox, National Pharmacare Call to Action.
Yeah, so this one, I saw this as an extension of what we supported earlier in this meeting, and I believe there's a similar resolution from the UCN. I think it makes a lot of sense to support, so I thought it was worthwhile. So I was going to try a resolution that the mayor send a proposal letter on behalf of the District of Squamish to the Federal Minister of Health and CC of the town of Comox.
Is there a seconder? No seconder. I, for one, would like to see this go through UBCM. We have a stronger voice from the body of local governments in BC, which is why I didn't second it. Councillor Pengill,
Okay.
you will move receipt?
Sure, I'll move receipt.
Seconded by Councillor French. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Anderson, you pulled letter 17 from Mr. Caldwell around center barrier weeding on local roads.
Yes, I'd like to refer this to staff or to move to refer this to staff. In doing so, I'd like to voice a suggestion for consideration only on the part of staff. It happens that now the lesser concerns maintenance costs for the highway meridian. Happens that I'm acquainted with the left designer that worked with the highway project in 2007, 2008.
We're having trouble hearing you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Anderson, I wonder if you could turn your video off and just use audio while you're speaking.
Very good. So it happens that I'm acquainted with the lady who was the landscape designer for the highway. And back in 2007, 2008, she predicted this problem of extensive maintenance of these meridians and other issues. With some frustration at the time. My suggestion is that this is an issue that can be cited as part of our presenting a picture of the issues that need 12 years or so after the completion of the Highway 99 upgrade. We have intersections that now, or now more clearly in hindsight, need new or different attention. We have other issues like Burn Park and lakeways there. But this reminds us that there's a bigger, holistic picture, if you like, of that highway upgrade and our need to present a picture. This is part of it. So I'm suggesting that staff might consider giving this, interpreting this as part of the highway upgrade needing review, from intersections all the way to landscaping. And Mr. Caldwell is quite right. This is an issue that was predicted many years ago. So with that suggestion in that motion, that it be referred to staff.
And just so I'm clear, Councillor Anderson, staff are doing what with this? Because the highway is provincial jurisdiction?
We bring issues concerning the highway within the municipality of Squamish regularly every year to the provincial government's attention. And this is an issue that reminds us that the whole highway upgrade project is something that we could look at more holistically, and that it is not only intersections and other miscellaneous issues, but even extending to landscaping. We can take a holistic view of what needs to be reviewed 12 years later.
Is there a seconder? Not seeing a seconder. Councillor Anderson.
My motion is to refer to staff. I'm voicing this suggestion alongside that motion.
There's no seconder. So we'll have to move receipt at this time.
Very good.
Move receipt by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford. All those in favor? Did you want to speak to it, Councillor French? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm struggling with where's the line drawn on this? Because if we are speaking out against the highways and the meridians, where does that leave the boulevard and in the Garibaldi Islands? So I'm much preferring that we're moving receipt and file of this for that reason alone, because of the potential local impacts if we're taking a stance against highway meridians. Thank you.
Councillor Pangill.
Yeah, I just reflect that at UBCM, we spoke to Mr. Trevina, I believe it was, about concerns around the highway. I think we may have an opportunity to do that again at this UBCM. So this is the sort of issue that I would feel comfortable sort of raising with the suite of highway concerns we have, and I think that's a more appropriate way at this time to manage this. And so sort of put that in my mental file for UBCM.
Councillor Race?
Thank you. I think before we did something like that, I'd like to know that there was council consensus on which direction we're going. Personally, I happen to like the weeding, and it's not our budget, but it's something that was contemplated, and I think it does make the area much more attractive. So I would not want to just stop it. If we're going to change it, then what that means is pull out all the plants and just pave it over. That's lower maintenance. So I think before we took off on one or two suggestions, I'd like to know if there was a consensus at all. So I'm happy at the moment to just refer it to staff.
Well, we're moving receipt, actually, rather than, yeah. And I think for myself, certainly the citizen has called this out. My concern with the highway, the running through Squamish, is speed and intersection safety. And those are the two advocacy pieces that I want to work on. If for some reason those meridians are causing safety issues, we can address it through that. But this is not our budget. If people want to advocate further around this issue, they should advocate to the minister. I want to focus on speed and safety of intersections in our advocacy over plants at this point in time. So I'm happy to move receipt. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Pettengill, letter 19, Eagle Mountain Pipeline permit issue.
Yes, thank you. I read through the permit a few times, and I was having trouble understanding what areas the permit referred to in terms of where areas could be disturbed and so on. Some of the language made me concerned that there was permissions to disturb areas in the wildlife management area. There are no maps, there are just some rather obscure codes to identify the geography, and I tried Googling and finding what those are, and I was unable to, it's also unclear what the longevity of this permit is. So I was hoping to ask staff to follow up on those issues, and then when that comes back from the answer, also to understand what, if any, engagement the OGC had with staff prior to this. So I guess I would resolve for staff to follow up the OGC to better understand the geography of where the permit applies to and the longevity of the permit.
Councillor Pettengill, out of respect for our staff and that this is not their project, and the fact that Fortis has applied to appear as a delegation this fall, may I suggest that this letter is actually forwarded to them with your questions in regard to the permit, so that they present on what has been permitted with maps and more clarity, rather than our staff having to do this work?
Sure, that would be fine.
So that we actually refer this letter to staff, but also to Fortis, so that Fortis can bring this information with them in their presentation this fall. Would that address your concerns?
Yes, it would.
Doug, Councillor Race, you're seconding that?
No, I actually wanted to speak to the issue. So
You want to speak to it before it's seconded, or after?
I'll second it.
Okay, go ahead.
But the information is, they had two kind of webinars a couple of weeks ago on successive days, and we all got notified about that. And I watched one of them, and it was very informative. And so that pipeline, the tunnel rather, is going from more or less the North Yards area, or the EC Rail Yards area, to Woodfibre. It's about 9 kilometers, and it's supposed to be built, completed rather, in 2025 at the present schedule. And I think that's probably on their website. I haven't looked. But there's quite an informative thing, and it also spoke about the rest of the pipeline and routing and where it's been rerouted for First Nations concerns and so forth. So I think that's all out there, and you could get it off, perhaps off the Porter's website.
Councillor Pettengill.
Yeah, I attended the 4 sessions both nights, and they were still talking about an EA amendment to move the pipeline route, so I think that's quite separate from the very specific permit they had received. And so I am looking for information about the specifics of the permit, and Fortis can provide that with a map. That would be appreciated.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Did you still want to speak to letter 27? Or, sorry, Mr. Buxton's response on the extension request draft report?
No, I think it got covered in the Mrs. Saxby's letter. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move receipt.
Yes, please.
I'll second that. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're on to item 14.1, recommendation from the Committee of the Whole from July 28th that we received the Q2 2020 quarterly financial report for information. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor French. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And that the District of Squamish approve implementation of Scenario 2 as described in the report from Community Planning and Infrastructure dated July 28th, and that staff implement and monitor existing and additional neighborhood ways. Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Stoner opposes. Motion carries. Recommendations from the Smokeless Park Committee meeting from July 23rd. The walkthrough trail assessment to be carried out. That staff be directed to research cyclist and pedestrian traffic calming best practices for the Smoke Bluff Park commuter trails, and that staff provide an update or options to the Smoke Bluff Park Committee at a subsequent meeting. It is moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor French. Can I just ask Councillor Stoner what the concerns were?
Yeah, so it's the section of trail that comes down from, it's on a little bit of a hill towards the play area, and there's a little bit of a blind corner, and they've since brushed a little bit of the greenery back, but there is a steep close calls in that particular section of trail with folks on bikes versus pedestrians, and so there was just a request for understanding some best practices of what we could do in terms of slowing down some of the bike traffic in that space.
Okay, thank you.
If there are any budget implications, it would come as a budget request, or in there, they would use their future budget to implement that.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Oh, tricking me up, Councillor Anderson. Opposed? Motion carries. Part of their roundtable discussion at that meeting, that staff be directed to explore options and costs of designated family parking spaces at the corner of Panorama Place and Smoke Bluffs Road. And that staff provide an update to the Smoke Bluffs Park Committee at a subsequent meeting. Councillor Stoner, moving that. Seconded by Councillor French. Did the committee speak to how many spaces they were looking for, or?
No, they were just looking at to learn more about feasibility of doing this, just as the areas that are close to easily accessible, both climbing peaks for children as well as close to the playground area there, and so they were just looking at feasibility of doing so and potential impacts on parking.
Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we have committee minutes to receive, advisory design panel minutes from July 16th. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor French. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And Smoke Bluffs Park Committee minutes from July 23rd, 2020. Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There are no council staff and camera items to announce. Any unscheduled, nope, we did not have any unscheduled public attention. Open question period. Is there anyone online that wants to ask a question? No, there is no one online to ask us a question. Council or staff announcement? Council French?
Thank you. I noticed today, driving from the Garibaldi Estates and the Garibaldi Highlands, that there's new wayfinding signs pointing to the Adventure Hub at Garibaldi Highlands Elementary School. And these new signs are far more fitting of the posts that were installed. The previous signage, I felt, was insufficient and didn't do justice to the monoliths that were planted for the signs to go on. So I commend the staff members who were involved with that. I think they look great. To my eye, they're effective, and there's an additional sign on Perth at Portree that actually points drivers off of Perth to Portree at the school. I think that sign is the grand finale to get folks to the Adventure Hub at Garibaldi Highlands Elementary School and hopefully ease some of the pain of the folks who live at the top of Perth and Pia and those streets that are regularly, even on weekdays, being congested by recreation seekers looking for the trail plans out into Albuquerque Provincial Park and the trail network. So good work, staff. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Councilor Pengil?
Thank you. A couple of things. I attended the Pride flag raising yesterday. It was a good event, well attended, even despite everyone being socially distanced. And I wore my shirt again today, thinking I was, smart and special for remembering. And then I got on camera and realized you couldn't see it. So it just looked like I've been wearing a grubby t-shirt all day, but I actually had a purpose to the shirt, and I'm quite proud of it. So I had to show off, and it was a really nice event yesterday. The other thing, I had the privilege of attending the SLRD in my role as an alternate, and the one topic was the name escapes me now, a development just north of Whistler.
Wedgwood?
Wedgwood, thank you. And that did not get second reading, I believe. And just want to highlight the discussion. One of the key concerns was the location of affordable housing. So it just highlighted for me that across the whole region, people are really struggling and concerned about affordable housing and looking for ways to get affordable housing that is near the services and makes for more walkable communities. So a lot of the things that we're talking about in Squamish just remind me that everyone is paying attention to these things.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, I will be quick. Last week at the Spring Open Home, there's another one being held tomorrow by Ocean Watch on the Ocean Watch Housebound Edition 2020 release event. So they have updated the Housebound report with comparisons to the 2018 report, and it is a great resource for us to understand the health of our oceans and the sound, and encourage everybody to take a look at the report and or join the second webinar that will be hosted tomorrow from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m.
All right, and Council, we will be getting a hard copy of that, and so we'll have one available if you prefer to read it in hard copy. That should be with us in the next little while. It's on its way to us. I would like to thank Councillor Stoner for overseeing my role while I was on vacation during parts of this month. I really appreciate the ability to step away. I do want to remind our community to be kind and to stay calm and to be safe. We do have COVID-19 in our community, and I ask people to monitor their online comments and focus on supporting the folks in our community that are having to isolate because they were in close contact with someone with COVID, or actually have symptoms and are isolating at home. People need our support, not our judgment at this time. And it's going to be challenging this fall as children go back to school, as people are more integrated into work settings, and as just flu and cold symptoms are traveling through the community as normal during the winter months. And I would just ask everyone to withhold their judgment and really just reach out with support and empathy to members of our community that find themselves in this situation. It can't be easy, and we all need to be very vigilant now. The public health officer is asking us to make our circles smaller again in anticipation of the cold and flu season. So I'd ask everyone to just take a deep breath and focus on doing the right thing and supporting their fellow citizens. Councillor Herford was speaking the other day and had an analogy that he learned from training, and that when you're training, you treat training like you're wrestling a gorilla, and you don't stop when you're tired, you stop when the gorilla's tired. And COVID-19 is the gorilla, and it's not tired yet, and so we can't stop wrestling with it. It has to be front of mind for all of us, and we have to do it in a way that is calm and kind and safe for all of us. So as we reopen facilities, as we send our children back to school, as we all make decisions that make sense for ourselves and those that are close to us, and as we find some of our friends isolating, we all need to respect and support and help each other get through this. So just a reminder to community, it's out there, it's invisible, and please take every precaution that we've heard from public health. Now is not the time to be lapsing on our behavior. So with that, I would like to go to my final mayor's update, which is we have refugees that are arriving into Squamish. And in the past, council has always provided transit passes for 1 year to help support integration into the community and access to support and services and work. And these motions have always come to us as one-off and very specific to each person. And so I would like to put forward to council that council authorize staff to provide a 1-year transit pass to refugees newly arrived in Squamish to be funded from council contingency for the duration of council's term, so that each time I get this requested, I don't need to bring this to council, but that staff are just empowered to deliver that pass to our newly arrived residents for their first year in our town. That's moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Thank you for your support on that. I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. I will now entertain a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford. Welcome back to the fall session of council. We got lots to do in September. It's a busy month. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
So great evening.